and take a step back from that and kind of peel the covers and kind of see behind the scenes.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Rachel with Artisans of Nations, a premier storytelling platform of Native people, culture, and the arts. We're here today with Del Curfman, contemporary Native artist from Crow Nation. Del, how's it going?
It's good. In the fall, Santa Fe is like a nice, cool temperature. I hope you'll like seen that, felt that. We do get 4 seasons here in Santa Fe, so it's good to see the colors changing. I don't know if you've been up to the Aspens yet, but it's been pretty good, so life's good, art's good. Here we are.
We are. Yeah, sweet. So, we're here in your studio. Super nice.
This is the stew.
This is a super nice spot.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us in. Super honored to have this time and space with you. Where are you from? And a little bit of your story and how you got here to Santa Fe.
Yeah, Shoda, Balaje, Bachachilish, Ichik, Diogom. Hello, my name's Del. My Crow name is Bachachilish. That translates to he will have a fortunate life, fortunate one, fortunate family. And so, in general, I like to live up to that name to the best of my abilities. And so, part of that's remaining humble and kind of keeping my head to a space where, to do good for communities, to do better for myself, to kind of bring that fortune to this life, right? So that's kind of a part of who I've become. I think I've lived up to that name. My clan uncle, Calvin Herrera, or Ugashe Butch, he gave me that name, and I'm trying my best to live up to that and to do good by my community, by my people, by the greater intertribal community that we live in. And I come from a place outside of Pryor, Montana. Pryor, Montana is home of the mountain crow. And my grandma, my kala, Patsy Whiteman, she was born in Crow Agency, which is traditional homelands of the river crow. However, she was adopted to the mountain crow when she was growing up. So we claim that space. I come from the Ties in the Bundle clan, and what brought me to Santa Fe is which is I think a pretty common story for Native artists, and there's a whole history of folks that have come into this land from outside of the Southwest, and Native and non-Native. I think we all have come to enjoy the land of entrapment, as they say sometimes. So moved around a little bit after high school, ended up in Washington, D.C. for a little while. My uncle, Del Lavender, I lived with him in Washington, D.C., and he was a huge influence in my earlier years, and he actually was the one who introduced me to IAI, and I was kind of in this space where I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And I'd already been kind of this artist in the family, and I had kind of established myself as someone that was interested in something other than, the typical computer, cubicle, like office work situation. And so he recommended that I look at Santa Fe and I look at IAI. So that's how I originally started to apply, was, finding that out. And then, 2012. By 2012, I came for my first semester at IAI. By like 2015, I had really started enjoying Santa Fe for what it is and this intertribal feel, and had started making art and painting. And also, too, by that time, I had really found a way at IAI. I was captivated by the curriculum and the people there, and so I ended up double majoring at IAI with a emphasis in studio arts with painting and drawing, and then a double major in museum studies.
Yeah, IAI is an amazing school. I took a couple classes there last semester. I need to get back on that. Love the campus, beautiful campus. But besides IAIA, let's talk about your work and your story with that here we are, in your stude, with beautiful, stunning paintings.
Startings. Yeah.
Starting.
Works in
Sorry.
progress.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Love it. All right. So, tell us a little bit more about this, and how did you get here? What is this series called, and this project, and kind of let's tease that out a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, so I think probably it's best to start from like the origin of the painting, passion, right? Like, I had this idea that like there's a stereotype of the savant artist. They're like the artist that was born to be an artist, right? And, I had seen some of those folks in my life. I had been a part of, culture that like cherished art, but that art was more of like a physical form. It was more of like beadwork. It was more like regalia making. It was more like, drum making, things like that. It wasn't necessarily like painting on canvas or drawing on ledger paper. It wasn't like, it was a little bit more utilitarian in sense, right? So like my exposure, my mind hadn't really been able to develop this like opportunity to work with the visual arts, right? So it wasn't until IAI that I really kind of seen so much of the world that is Native art, right? In Montana, it's very, very different. At least when I was growing up, there wasn't really like an art scene necessarily. There wasn't really like, there was one museum and it was the Yellowstone Art Museum, and it was like an hour away, and there wasn't really like Native arts and cultures focus. Like here in New Mexico, like there's so much Native art like available to you, and it's so accessible, and you can go to any museum and see Native representation, right? In Montana, it was like wildlife and like cowboys. And it's still kind of like that. Like I go back home, and at the airport, like there was like this portrait, like this series of portraits of like cowboy, like rodeo folks, in like the what is it, the National Rodeo Association, right? The NRA.
Okay.
Something like that.
I'm gonna have to check this out. I love cowboys.
Yeah, right. And the cowboy hats. No, I mean, like when you land in the airport, like that was one of the first things you've seen. Like this like wall of cowboys, right? So, to me, it was like something that really I wasn't exposed to. So, even though like in my own tribe there are like successful Native artists, there's Earl Biss, there's Kevin Red Star and his family. Those folks are out there doing stuff right now, and yet those doors weren't really open to me. I think mainly because the culture is a lot different about arts and cultures in general. Like it's just not like well advertised or accessible, right? So really like my first interaction with this sort of like material was at IAI, right? So I think what started my path to becoming a painter was IAI, but then wanting to share all this like cultural knowledge and experiences and memories, like cherished deep like childhood memories of my like culture or connection. So like growing up, it was a little different in terms of like my you could say like urban Indian childhood, or comparative that to a res childhood. They're different experiences, right? I didn't realize until later growing up that I was like the urban Indian, right? So I lived off reservation, but it was like a border town situation, and I was always on and off. I was always going to these like family functions. I was always going to like feasts. I remember going and just like being a part of culture, and yet I didn't quite realize that like I went to a different place. Like I went back to like this border town area.
Wow.
And so like, to me that it just seemed like everyone left and went to their home, but their home was a lot closer to the reservation than maybe where me, my Kala, my grandma, my dad, we would go back to. So, to me that's kind of the stage where I'm like, where did I connect most in my childhood? Where did I connect most? And it was always like cultural events. It was always like places like Crow Fair. And so that's where I like when coming to IAI and coming to Santa Fe, I seen everyone just like showcasing their native like roots and like their indigenous values, and there was like so much support for it, and there was like everybody out here doing native imagery, right? Native things in their artwork, right? And so that's how I got involved with like wanting to paint like something I knew, something I was familiar with. So that's how like the Vanishing series was born, was like this connection to Crowfair and like a deep kind of proud nature of being able to go and like set up teepees and be with my clan uncle, Janice White Man, who had like set up this so our traditional like camping ground, and he would invite us out and we would all go set up teepees in August. And that for me was like part of like the most valuable part of my childhood. So part of that, when I came to Santa Fe, was like homesickness, but it was also like seeing all these other indigenous people showcasing their native experiences. And so that's how the Vanishing Series was born. And then developing it over time, working with that for 7 years, having it go through this like development stage into the commercial space, to like art world, to the gallery world, to it kind of like evolved into a place where other people had influence over it. It was less and like there was like me still doing the art for myself, but then there was more and more influence over the market coming in and saying this is something we really like and we want to support it, and then it becoming more like we can sell this, we can move this, we can put this on Canyon Road. And that started becoming uncomfortable for me. It kind of became more.
Why was that? What was uncomfortable about it?
Well, my message became more and more diluted, right? So like first it was like, well, let's share your story. So then it was like, here's all this amazing art that I can do and I can show you. And so many people were interested in it. And then it became like, well, we need this, and this. And then we want this type of this and we want this type of that. The direction became, can we have more of this or less of that? Or like, can you delete all of the color field for this time? Basically like, there was a more like asks of me because they saw sales, right? And they seen people supporting it. And so I don't want to say like that experience in itself that's valuable. I think we as Native artists are always engaging with market and people wanting support work. So I'm not saying like that was uncomfortable. What was uncomfortable was like the asks and the sort of like switches and changes and like the things that were kind of more increasingly being asked of me.
Did you feel like it took away or spoke for you?
Right. Like part of it was not like that was part of that discussion, but it was also like the internal feeling of like, am I doing this for this reason or that reason, or am I doing this so that it goes out and finds a new home? Or like there was just a space where it felt like less authentic. And so I started like reevaluating, and that's where I came to the space where Faces of Our Land was born and sort of like developed. Was like this experience that so much of the Native art world is kind of like influenced, maybe even abstractly, by the market or consumer or like just like the like salesmanship of something, right? So part of it was too that these asks were being made of me. And then the other part was like my narrative, the things I was trying to tell and say with the work. Once you give it to the gallery, they can kind of share whatever they want or like change the story. Like I was getting feedback from collectors that like my story wasn't really coming through because of the gallery's interface, right? Which I think is like a part of everyday gallery experiences,
Sure,
right? Like
totally.
I don't want to fault any part of the system. I just realized that I wanted to take my work in a new direction because of the system and how I was feeling at that time.
Yeah, totally. That's fair.
And so I started writing grants. I wrote 3 grants, and my first that I received was in 2021. It was from the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation. It was the LIFT program. And
Congrats, by the way.
Appreciate that,
Yeah,
right?
man.
So that allowed me to work with Native models, compensate them for their inclusion and for their participation. That was something that I had seen from Native world, is that sure, you see all this beautiful imagery of Native people, but then you don't get to hear their stories. You don't get to see or hear their authentic words from them, about them, and you don't really get to see their personality shine through or their stories or where they're at in their life. So much of Native art is like this beautiful image and this beautiful presentation. And so I wanted to take a step back from that and kind of peel the covers and kind of see behind the scenes. For instance, Golga, right? Golga's been featured in so many pieces about him, about his life, about Native Alaskan life. He's Yupik from community in Alaska, and so for him, like giving an opportunity to give him a platform and to work together collaboratively, and for him and his authentic words to come through not only in my canvas but also Faces of Our Land is a multimedia platform. It's video, it's text, it's ebook, and it's this canvas. So for him and I to work together, I thought it was really crucial that parts of these stories are kind of theirs to keep and to share and to have ownership of, because so much of Native art isn't really that. It's kind of directed or taken over by the artist, whether they're Native or not. So that's where, Face of Our Land was really kind of, I think, starting to gain traction, was this idea that it's a collaborative process. Native people are given the space to talk freely for their own purposes, and to then, partially be education to the non-Native community, because it discusses stereotypes, it discusses Native experiences that go beyond your typical, maybe romanticized idea of Native culture. And you get to see people in traditional regalia, you get to see people in Native fashion, contemporary fashion. From 2021 and beyond, I've been working primarily on Faces of Our Land.
Wow. Stunning work.
So far, it's been interesting, right? And so there has been development within that series as well, right? So
yeah, this is such a journey, right? And
yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things, early on when I started to get to know you and your work, it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, he does this beautiful work of storytelling with Native people of different backgrounds and different tribes and regions. Alignment there of the heart and the vision was something that I gravitated towards you. Also, I mean, how talented you are too. Like,
Sure.
Such a humble guy. So this is such a gift that you have. And I think, being able to tell stories that will live on for generations, right? While also honoring those who have come before us. And I think one of the things that catches my eye, I think even just for this episode, as we unfold more about Faces of Our Land, can you tell us just kind of like a broad brushstroke?
Faces of Our Land is an investigation into the urban Indian diaspora. And it's artistic, in my mind, it's artistic journalism, right? I'm going in, I'm finding out about people's lives. I'm taking a journey into their world, right? And all of it focusing on who they are, and where they're at in their lives. So a lot of the work is kind of getting to know people. And it's kind of like interesting. A lot of the people that I've worked with are already a part of my network, right? So it's interesting, like these are family, these are friends, these are people that I think are doing really great things, and they might be in their own little world of greatness, right? So I wanted to highlight the kind of diversity that Native people bring to our world, to the contemporary Western world, to the places that we find here in Santa Fe, to the people that are coming in from across the land to find themselves in Santa Fe, but also what they're doing outside in their world, right? So part of that too is like finding these interesting threads where Native communities find intersections. So part of that is like stereotypes, what we find on reservations or near reservations or in urban areas that have high Native population. There are living stereotypes that Native people face. There's also very specific issues that Native people face on ancestral homelands, on the reservation, whether they're visiting or they're on the reservation. So part of it is like finding those stories and then finding an interesting way to discuss them and to share parts of our lives that may be challenging or may be difficult, but also are worth telling or also worth uncovering or sharing. things that tie our communities together, which, one of which is the food desert issue, right? So a food desert could be considered any area in which there's a lack of resources, a lack of food of quality, or a lack of opportunity to engage with local farming, local fresh foods. For like back home in my community in Montana, and this might be rural. It may not necessarily be a native community, but we all can kind of understand how lack of access can kind of create a desert, right? So back home in Montana, it's kind of a food desert means that it's like 2 hours one way to get to a food source, and that food source might be a gas station.
Wow.
And so, like, part of this space that you see here, and part of the work that you'll see with Faces of our Land is talking about food desert problems, or like the idea, a concept of a food desert being foreign to someone who is not familiar with it. So the food desert kind of pops up throughout, and it pops up in different ways. For instance, like Kevin Beltran, who I worked with, he's actually he's done programming with Santa Fe Indian School, teaching Pueblo youth on ancestral agriculture and how to practice, for him, it's Zuni understanding of land, of harvesting, of crop. And so, he brings this whole world together where he's like battling food deserts and the idea of food deserts, but through his own practices. And yet it's like generational knowledge that he's bringing to the table.
So good.
Whereas like Cami Joe and myself and others, we're seeing it from the front line. We're seeing it from the fact that we didn't always have access to healthy or safe foods, or our only option was a gas station, right? So, take Cheetos, right? So Cheetos is maybe an afternoon or after school snack for a lot of folks, right? Or it's their favorite, like going to the movie snack, or it might be like,
for sure,
yeah, something you might find, hanging out at a cafeteria or something. But, for some communities, it's like their only meal for the day. It's like the big family size Cheeto pack, right? And I'm not saying like what Cami Joe or I have lived through is that. What I'm saying is like, look at the idea of the Flaming Hot Cheeto as nutrition. It's literally, while I was painting this painting, the Cheetos are cad red, they're cadmium yellow, they're hyperpigment orange, they're permanent orange. They're like colors that aren't food related, right? And yet I'm painting them on the canvas, and they're like the natural color of a Cheeto, right? So to me, it's like interesting to see that and like see how that plays out on the canvas, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like with Kevin, his composition and what his story was told through was like fighting the oppression. So his posture became that of like the Banksy's, like it's an ode to Banksy's West Bank piece, where it was give flower power, give it was a piece on war on peace. So it featured a kind of rebellious, it was the posture is someone cocking back, and in their hand is a bouquet of flowers, and it's give peace a chance. It's an ode to that piece where Banksy is discussing war and peace, and what does it mean to have peace in the Middle East and peace in this general area, right? And so for Kevin and I's work, I had him pose as if he's posturing like that, and in Kevin's hand, it's a piece of corn that he harvested with his family, right? And so he's actually fighting this oppressive nature that is like food desert world through his work, harvesting and planting and teaching Pueblo youth how to plant and crop and have harvests.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, I feel like, in one of our next episodes with you, we'll unpack even more of that, because that is such a major issue, social issue, right?
Right.
Food security, food sovereignty,
right.
Access,
exactly.
you touch upon so many different threads. So,
and two, I want to, before we move forward too, like the idea of a food desert doesn't have to be rural. I connected with somebody who was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he was actually a working physician, and he himself was battling food insecurity, food desert in a urban area, simply because in that area it was an African American Black community, and again, they had no access to grocery stores because they all had got shut down. They had all gotten like renovated or moved out, or they got pushed into an area where there just wasn't resources, right? So like a food desert and food insecurity doesn't necessarily have to mean like distance. It can be like a social economic issue. To me, also growing up, I grew up on food stamps. And so there's another piece I did called Food Coupons. And so it features a background that is the food coupon. It's a literal representation of the food coupon. I grew up on stamps, right? So stamps was this little booklet. You peeled off stamps, and then you had like X amount of stamps equal X amount of dollars. And then you give that to the cashier, and then you get like a loaf of bread. And so I remember like growing up, that was like my birthday and my Christmas presents was to get food stamps, right?
That's real.
And I grew up thinking that was normal. And yet when I tell that story, people are like, nah, like I got, for my birthday, I got the G.I. Joe, or I got whatever. So that was funny. But, another situation is something like that interconnects with food deserts is like food insecurity, food sovereignty. I mean, there's this broad spectrum of issues that we face as people, not just Native people, that is worth investigating and looking at. So, like I mentioned, like it can be urban, it can be rural, it can be any number of issues that we face. And I think I'm investigating interesting visual concepts that I put into these paintings that help tell these stories and help audience learn and grow and find out about not only like culture, but urban Indian culture, urbanness, but also traditional life as well.
This is such a great start for us to chew on. Maybe even literally.
Sure.
Fun question. So what's your favorite Cheetos? Is it the Puffs? Is it hot Cheetos? Don't they have like lime or like spicy hot or those the crunchy? Dude, they have like so many now.
They're everywhere, right? And they come all different shapes and forms.
Right. What's the fave?
I mean, I didn't really grow up eating Cheetos. Like that wasn't something that I like inherently like loved or had. I had Pop-Tarts. Pop-Tarts was something that I used to really go crazy over like blueberry Pop-Tarts or
frosted or unfrosted.
Frosted, of course. How could you not?
Yeah, let's go.
And then I had like brown sugar one. Like it was like maple and brown sugar.
Yep.
And it was crazy because like most of the times I would just eat them raw, like not even toasted, because it was just like on the go, right? So I don't know. That's pretty wild. I can't remember the last time I had a Pop-Tart though.
I know, that's making me want to like go buy. Mine is strawberry frosted.
Strawberry frosted.
Well, I'm getting hungry now. I wanted to grab something, pick up a bag of chips or Pop-Tarts. But before we do that, want to say thank you for your time and sharing with us. A brief synopsis. I feel like even that word is not doing it justice, because you do such great work and it's really valuable. And so I can't wait for us to dig deeper into more of Faces of Our Land, and even more into your story, Del, and where you and your family are from, and your tribe, and what that all looks like, and how you bring that into your worldview now with your work.
And I think there's a lot of overlap. When we first started, collaborating or thinking about collaboration, your project, Artisans of Nations, I think, there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of parallels that we're working towards. And so thank you for, wanting to start this and to like, figure a way out to collaborate. And I hope this is like a beginning to something that will grow, and like you can take in your own direction and I can help along that process. And I really appreciate the time and energy that goes into a project like this.
Same. Yeah, it's an honor to collaborate with you, for real.
Yeah.
Such a good person, good
Appreciate
heart,
it.
good soul.
Yeah.
Great artist. And so with that, can you tell our audience, how can we find you? Sure. Where do we go to learn more about Faces of Our Land? Can we buy some works? What's that all like?
Right. So then You can see the work at facesoverland.com. You can see my work at delcurfman.com. We're also on Instagram. So Crow Color Studio on Instagram and Facebook. And then we are trying to get more and more of Faces Overland in the social media. So there is an Instagram. There is going to be a lot of opportunities coming up to engage. And so I think later on in the series, we'll have more opportunity to highlight that. But right now, it's the website and also Instagram.
Sweet. Well, hey, thanks everyone. Thank you,
Yeah,
Del.
thank you.
Appreciate you. Appreciate having us in your studio.
Yeah.
So join us next time for our next episode here. And appreciate you. Follow us as well, artisansofnations.com and on Instagram and YouTube. Much love to you all. Peace.